Hello, this is your presentation for the world in 300 CE, your introduction to History Alive and to um, Lesson 0 or Unit 0. Our essential question for today is how did the distant regions of the world become more interconnected through medieval and early modern times? So your goal is by the end of this chapter and this presentation, you should be able to summarize um, what are the major themes, changes, and empires of the world in 300 CE, and how are they interconnected in some way. When we talk about teaching the world's history, we can track history through common themes, like those 6 themes that we mentioned. But we can also use major historical changes to track history as well. So in the Middle Ages, some major changes that we can track are technology advancements. So things like the modern plow made it easier to farm. Even something like the wheelbarrow was invented in the Middle Ages, and tidal mills, which were used the power of the tides to run different types of mills to produce mechanical power. There's also changes in global trade routes. You can see in this map here the different trade routes that are filling basically Europe on the ocean over land, in the Atlantic Ocean specifically for Europe, but it spread all the way to the Pacific Ocean on the other coast, on the eastern coast. We also have to talk about the rise of kingdoms, empires, and patriarchal societies. So this is when one leader begins to take over large kingdoms and empires and spreading their influence. Sites of encounter also become essential in understanding how different cultures and people are interconnected. So a site of encounter is a specific place where people from different cultures meet and exchange products, ideas, and technologies. So you can see in the map to the right, all of these spheres of different people. But you can see at the center of those spheres where they kind of connect, those are our sites. Those are our sites of encounter. So all of these cities could be considered sites of encounter just by how close they are to all of these different people intermingling and being interconnected. So some major sites are Rome, Cairo in Egypt, Norman, Sicily, Calicut, Mali, Chenzhou in China, and Tenochtitlan in Mexico. We can think of history and geography split into 2 regions in 300 CE, the Americas and Afro-Eurasia. One place that we focus on is Mesoamerica, so that's modern Central America and Mexico today. They had large cities, states, and empires supported by agriculture and local trade. So we have the Maya people, and they have a real connection to Teotihuacan in central Mexico, and they were major trade partners. We can also go further south. So you might be familiar with the ancient city of Machu Picchu, or the famous city of Machu Picchu, in the Andes mountain spine in Southern America. So if you go a little further south, you have people that gathered in the Andes. Their large civilization also rose to power with many agricultural advancements. Afro-Eurasia is Europe, Africa, and Asia. And we call it Afro-Eurasia just to focus on that interconnectedness of people. A lot of times in modern times, we like to think of those regions as totally separate based on political boundaries, but really in the Middle Ages, this is where the Silk Road connected many cultures and societies. So this red area this red area in the center, those are the major Silk Road routes. And these blue lines represent the sea routes. So this is where luxury goods, language, religion, ideas were exchanged all across Eurasia, from the Atlantic on the west side all the way to the east to the Pacific Ocean coasts. So luxury goods, language, religion, but also disease spread on these routes, which we'll talk about in our study. The last section that we need to talk about when we're talking about 300 CE, the start of the Middle Ages, we have to talk about empires, migration, and turbulent times. So all of these things facilitated people being interconnected and intermingling. So an empire is a large territory made up of different cultures and people ruled by a single ruler, or an empire in some cases. The easiest example to share is the Roman Empire. We have a lot of different cultures ruled by one entity, Rome and the emperor. This interconnected these people through one political system, one social structure, and it forced people in many cases to interact. We have the Sasanian Persian Empire, Gupta Empire, and China itself as an empire that facilitated many of the same things. Many times this would cause migration. Conflicts cause migration of people. And things like disease that spread along routes like the trade routes like the Silk Road added to the turbulent times because it facilitated these mass exoduses or exits from regions that were feeling the disease the most. Not everyone lived under an empire. We have what are called pastoral nomads. Those are people who migrate and depend on the livestock that they raise. You can see also Africa, though they didn't have what we consider in history a traditional empire, they had many kingdoms that functioned and had similar trade routes to Europe itself. So you can see many of the kingdoms of Africa, based on these trade routes and arrows, migrated just as it happened in Upper Europe and in Asia.